Hello everyone, welcome back to another lesson on IELTS academic grading tips. And in this one, we are talking about yet another kind of trend that is common in the IELTS academic grading task 1, and that is peaks and troughs. Essentially, peak is a maximum, and when you see a maximum in the graph that you're presented with in the task 1, and the trough is the minimum. When you see a minimum in the graph that you're presented, that would be your trough. And how they would look like is kind of like this. So for example, you have a x and y axis, and you hit a maximum like this. Or on the other side of it, if you hit a minimum like this. So in this lesson, we are going to talk about how to describe this kind of graph or this kind of trend. So let's remove these graphs and focus on verbs and adverbs and different phrases that we can use to describe these. So with a little bit of a practice with these verbs and phrases, you'll be ready to, when it comes to your actual exam, you can easily write these sentences if you practice. So please practice these verbs and phrases. So different verbs for a maximum is peak. So for example, this sales figure peaked at X number, or reached the peak at X number, or hit a high of the sales figure hit a high of 10,000 units per month, for example, or sales figure surged to X value, surged to $10,000 per month or year, or whatever that number is. And different phrases that you can use for this kind of scenario when the trend has a maximum is you can write, for example, the trend reached a peak of, or reached its highest point. Let's write the other one. Its highest point of whatever that number is, or the trend, or the graph, or the value that you're looking at hit an all-time high. Hit an all-time high. There's a hyphen here between all and time. Hit an all-time high of 10,000, or it rose to a peak of the value. Also, on the other side of it is the minimum. When the graph has a minimum, so you can use similar verbs or parallel verbs to describe the minimum. So for example, the value bottomed out, or fell to the value shown, or sank to. These are the verbs that you can use. The phrases that you can use for this scenario is, so for example, you can say, let's write phrases here. The data fell to its lowest point at, it's better to be specific, so lowest point at the value, or hit an all-time low similar to all-time high. So you can say the sales figure hit an all-time low of this number at this time of the year, for example. Or you can say it dropped to a trough of whatever the value. So kind of similar to a peak. When it roses to a peak, the value roses to a peak, or a value drops to a trough. It's the other side of it. It hits the minimum. let's highlight these verbs and phrases because I think they're important, and typically most of the graphs has a maximum unless it's just ever increasing or ever decreasing, but it is very common that you see graphs that has a maximum or a minimum. So it's good to practice these. So peak, for example, reach a peak or hit a height of the value or surge to a value. Also, in terms of the phrases, hit an all-time high or rose to a peak or peak of the value, or hit an all-time low or drop to a trough. So, and also the verbs that it's easy to practice is the value bottoms out or falls to whatever that is, or sinks to the value that is shown in the graph. So let's move to the next page and we can practice a few sentences as an example of how you can use these phrases and verbs to provide description for these kind of trends. So for example, you can say the sales figures peaked at $10,000 in May. So this is one example. Another example is you can, on the other side of it, the minimum, you can say the unemployment rate hit an all-time low of 5% in 2020. Another example is when you want to mix, when there's a maximum and then afterwards there's a minimum, for example. So you can say mix of these two. So you can say although the figures rose significantly in January, this J needs to be capitalized because it's a month. They fell to a trough in March, let's say. So this is also so rose significantly and fell to a trough. So essentially, if you can imagine, the graph looks like this. So this is January and this is March. So you can mix and match these phrases with each other. When there's a high, there's a low, so you can mix these phrases and the verbs. What would be another example? So for example, you can say the revenue has bottomed out at let's give it $20,000. We are generous. We are feeling super generous today. Per month, why not? So this is the bad case scenario that the revenue dropped to $2,000 per month. It's not in my opinion, it's not that bad money. So, but it is a bottom value in the graph. So let's show the graph. For example, the graph could have looked like this. Let's say so this, let's say it's $20,000 and let's say this is $50,000. So it was higher and then eventually bottomed out at $20,000 and this is time, let's say. Okay, so this is essentially most of the kind of different examples that you can use. Let's write another example and we can finish it right here. So for example, you can say electricity consumption surged to its highest point of 5,000 kilowatts in July, and that is typical because in summer people use more electricity to cool themselves down. Okay, so let's highlight the important parts. So surge to its highest point, and also bottomed out at the value. So this is essentially majority of the different ways that you can describe this trend of having a minimum or having a maximum. And with a little bit of practice, I think you can master this kind of description of different trends of peaks and troughs. That's it for today. I hope you like this lesson. Please practice these verbs and adverbs and phrases at home. Imagine different kind of scenario that you have a peak, you have a maximum, you have a minimum, and with these phrases that we mentioned, peak, bottom out, fall, sink to, hit a high, surge to, write few sentences for yourself down, and you can be sure that like when the exam time comes, you can write these easily for exam. That's it for today. Hopefully you liked it. See you in the next one. Cheers.